afternoon. Stocks in Asia were mixed as investors continue to monitor the situation surrounding Ukraine. The Nikkei in Japan closed 0.8% lower. Mainland Chinese stocks finished the trading day higher. The Hang Seng Index in Hong Kong hovering above the flat line as of its final hour of trading. Locally in corporate news, JSE and Nasdaq listed Grindrod Shipping says its full-year profit improved more than fivefold. It is also optimistic that it will continue to benefit from strong freight rates as well as the world struggles with supply chain disruptions. Meanwhile, minor goldfields reported a 20% rise in full-year profit that was boosted by higher production and firmer prices, but flagged growing cost pressures. To unpack the latest market news for us, we are joined by Patrice Rousseau, who is the Chief Investment Officer at Ashburton Investment. Patrice, thank you so much for your time. I mean, starting off, when we look at what's going on in Asia and probably even Europe, a bit of a mixed performance as, investors are looking at Russia, Ukraine, and also the Fed's next move. How is our local markets interpreting all of this?
Good afternoon to you and your viewers. Yes, a bit of a sigh of relief after the worst was averted in terms of a potential invasion of Ukraine by the Russians. We see markets fairly flat, although we see some flows going into the safe havens. We see precious metals rising, and on our bourse, gold shares very strong, and platinum shares, both really a sign that investors are probably not convinced that the worst is over in terms of a potential conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So it's really resources in the green, up close to 1%, and some of the names in the precious metals area really up quite strongly. AngloGold up 4%, that's Northern, Impala, Sibanye, all up between 3 to 4%, and some good results releases from DRD Gold, and you mentioned already from Goldfields. On the rest of the bourse, in terms of the industrials, more mixed, slightly to the downside. Heavyweights, Naspers and Process slightly marked down, and then some divergent performances from the Rand hedges. Richmond up 1%, whereas British American Tobacco reported recently very good results, down 1%.
Patrice, I can imagine as the Chief Investment Officer at Ashburton, there's a whole host of news that you digest every morning and even different reports, etc. But what are you finding the most interesting about markets right now?
It's a good question. If you look at local markets, I think the big positive is the fact that most of the companies releasing results are surprising on the upside and really beating expectation by quite a large margin. And that's across the board, especially SA-focused companies. I think the mood last year, as you would know, was so negative, and we've seen a strong recovery in the second half of the year. And when we see earnings guidance from the like of Nedbank strongly beating expectations, Bidvest strongly beating expectation, and more importantly, our small cap stocks like CAP, which is really a play on South African manufacturing, guiding to earnings up 60%. Grindrod itself, which is about logistics, and also the broader manufacturing, also guiding strongly up. I think it's quite a positive picture for the JSE, which explains why the JSE at the beginning of this year has outperformed global markets by quite a large margin. We're talking about 10-15% higher than most of the global markets in the developed world.
Right. So let's talk about those FOMC minutes that came out. I mean, reinforcing things that we have already are not surprised about, especially when it comes to rates and the reducing of that balance sheet. But overall, some saying that nothing much has really changed in terms of the pace, and it was perhaps even less hawkish than they expected. How did you interpret those FOMC minutes?
Yeah, everyone, like yourself, everyone's is on Fed watch. The money markets are pricing in close to 50 basis points hike in March. For the whole year, we in the region of 160, 170 in terms of hikes. I think it's quite clear to me if you read the minutes that the Fed will be pivoting towards a more hawkish stance. They are talking the market and announcing to the market that they will be hiking rates. Some of the FOMC members already saying that they're behind the curve and they should have hiked earlier. So they're talking quite hawkish, but the market is hopeful that the rate of increase by the Fed will be a lot more gradual. And this is really the tug of war we find in markets right now. I think the markets has discounted a lot of the bad news, but everyone's hoping that the Fed doesn't turn more hawkish than it already has warned.
Before I let you go, in a portfolio in an environment like this, does cash make sense?
Yeah, it's always a good question. Cash, you're earning 4% in South Africa on cash. Our bonds are at 9.5%. And if you look at the returns from equities already this year, that's outstripped that. So a cash in the portfolio doesn't really make sense unless you have a very negative view that maybe with the Fed hiking, you might get better opportunities to enter the market later. So a bit of cash in the portfolio if you feel that there might be a shock to the system, like we've seen with potential invasion of Ukraine, might be a good buffer if you quite risk averse.
All right, Patrice, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. That is Patrice Rousseau, who is the Chief Investment Officer at Ashburton Investments. We're going to take a quick break. We'll have more news with Nompumelelo after the break. And a little later on, I'll be back with the alternative investor. So stay tuned.